It's amazing being back at Travis. Just as a brief introduction, because of the nature of the Air Force, we have so much turnover. My name is Deacon Tyler Harris. I'm a second lieutenant in the U.S. Air Force in the Reserves. I'm a chaplain candidate. So basically, it's kind of like the purgatory of the Air Force Reserves. You're kind of this in-between stage. You're in, but not really. So next year, in June, I'll be ordained a priest for the Diocese of Monterey. I'm also a co-sponsored seminarian for the Archdiocese of the Military. So what that means is after I spend 3 years in a parish and doing reserve work, I'll come back on active duty. I was the superintendent, master sergeant here at Travis for the last about 7 years ago. And so it's kind of interesting going from one side of the aisle to the other. And it's a lot of fun. I recognize you. So there's a lot of familiar faces. And before I get started into the homily, I want to take this time to profoundly thank the Knights of Columbus for supporting me, praying for me, creating a Catholic community that helped foster my vocation. And I'd also like to thank Father Jeff and Father Bob Cannon for also continuing and helping my vocation as well, and Father David Dybel as well. So there's a lot of people that come together in creating and making a priest, so you don't do this by yourself. And it's a lot of work and it's a lot of fun. And I remember myself 9 years ago thinking how much school I had ahead of me. And 4 years bachelor's degree and the philosophy degree, and then 5 years of theology. So I have 2 semesters left of a 9-year process. So you can imagine I'm chomping at the bit to get out of school and get started and go to work for all of you. One of the amazing things I've gotten to do since I was ordained a deacon is I got to travel and do a lot of incredible things. I was ordained May 31st, and on 2 days after that, they flew me out to Yokota, Japan for 35 days. And I'd never been to Japan. I've been pretty much everywhere else in my 18-year career, but I'd never been to Japan. And it was really incredible because some of the ministry that we got to do there just was really life-changing. We did some homeless ministry. We went downtown and we got to feed the homeless. What we do is we'd gather airmen from different squadrons, and every Friday we'd go, and on Thursdays we'd collect food at the commissary. So we'd kind of beg folks to give us rice and cooking oil and things like that for us to bring down for food, so we can show up for this homeless ministry. And this ministry had been established for about the past 15 years or so, and they're pretty well set in what they did. And then after we would feed the homeless, we would take our airmen out and we'd go Mario Karting downtown Tokyo. And so basically you got on a little go-kart with no helmet, dressed up as a goofy character, and got to zip around 55 miles an hour of Tokyo. So it was a lot of fun. So I'd like to thank the Tokyo government for its non-safety and all the fun that produced. It was a lot of fun. And then right after that, I spent some time doing that, and then spent the last 3 weeks at Marian Hospital in Santa Maria, where I think Pat had some of the most life-changing ministry ever, and what I'd like to talk about today. When you're in the hospital, people's lives have been radically changed forever, or at least temporarily. They're forced to stop. And it's something that we really have a hard time doing, is just stopping. And I kind of have a philosophy now after being there, is that God will either give us the opportunity for us to stop on our own, or he'll just make us stop. And he'll put things in our lives that make us just have to reflect. And it's very difficult because I met this woman. She was kind of clawing at the walls, and I was seeing her. I was like, "What's going on? Why are you having anxiety? Is it going on medically?" She goes, "No, medically I'm great." She's like, "But I have things to do. And I have stuff at home, and I have lists, and I have things." And I laughed, and she goes, "What's so funny?" And I said, "This is the first time you've ever had to stand still in a long time, isn't it?" She said, "Yes." And I said, "How does that feel?" And she said, "Miserable." She said she'd rather have her injury than have to sit still. And so we began to talk and have conversations, and over the time that I was there, had lots of conversations with people. And it's amazing how all of a sudden they have to pull out their faith card. the heart of their faith, what keeps them grounded, what keeps them together. And it's really difficult, I think, sometimes to think about what happens when things get taken away. For her ability to do things, or as last week I like to say, we go from being a human doing and we stop becoming and being a human being. And what I mean by that is being a human doing is we're constantly doing things, and we're human beings. It means we just have to stop and be. Sometimes it seems like the only times we're stopped to be is when our cell phone dies or the Wi-Fi's out, right? And then what happens when the kids are like that? They're like, well, I don't know what to do. And they're constantly like, even the phone's dead. It's like, let's have a hard time with quiet. God can use that quiet in such tremendous and amazing ways, and we become possessed by our doing. In the gospel, we talked about the man who has many possessions, and we have difficulties with those as well. We work hard. We heard the readings today where you're toiling and working hard. Well, we're like, well, isn't working hard good? Isn't that the point? Working hard for a family is supposed to provide and all these other things. Yes, those are good. But I would put them under the category of 1B. And 1A is, who are we doing it for? See, ultimately, everything that we do and all the toil and all the work and all the striving we do is for God. But sometimes we forget why we're doing things, and we kind of just get caught up in the list, and we become human doings. And I even found myself getting caught up in this, because what would happen is when I first started working at the hospital, I started to get my first day, and it was great. I was visiting folks and giving them communion, and I was just feeling, man, this is so great. Chaplain Dan called me up saying, hey, Ty, it's time for dinner. And my shift was from noon to 7. So it was around 5 o'clock, and we had dinner, and I started to feel sick and really nauseous. And it wasn't because of what I ate. And I asked Father Dan, Chaplain Dan, like, what's happening? I said, I felt like I just ate a whole bunch of cake. And I don't feel very good. And he goes, what you did was, you just visited around, how many people did you visit? I said, around 35 people. He said, Ty, you're not used to doing all that work. And your system's not used to absorbing all those emotions, all those feelings, all those experiences from the lives of people. So what you did was a really good thing, but what you failed to do was to stop, rest, and pray in between those times visiting people. And it was a great experience, because after that, I would start to spend more time in the Blessed Sacrament before I went to go visit patients, and was reminded that even my ministry and things could be taken away, and that God doesn't really need me. No more was I reminded of this when I walked into a room and there was a paraplegic, and he couldn't move. He was in the bed, and he had a tracheotomy on top of everything else. So his eyes were open, and they were moving around, but I was told he didn't have much brain function, but they weren't sure how much. So I walked in, and I saw him, and I started to talk to him just like I would any other patient, and then I noticed that he can't reply, and I told him, I said, you know what, I'll be right back. And I went back into the nurse's station. I was like, how do you talk to a paraplegic with a tracheotomy in their throat? She looked at me, she said, I don't know. I have no idea. And I felt a little better. And I was instantly reminded to say, you know what, you talk to him the same way you talk to every other patient. And went back in there, and we had a good visit. Or the man that was in a persistent vegetative state. He could breathe on his own, but he had a feeding tube. He was around 35 years old, and he had no function. Everything he had was taken away. And I remember being so upset by seeing him, that kind of the injustice of it all. And after further reflection, I realized God can do more with the paraplegic in bed than he can do with me. And I began to think, okay, Lord, I need to prepare to start giving things away. I need to prepare to be the 91-year-old version of myself today, when I can't go where I want to go or do the great ministry that you've given me. I need to prepare for that today. And that takes humility and courage and a lot of faith and a lot of trust in God. So my challenge for all of you today is to, first of all, thank God for the amazing blessings that you have. Every single one of you came here today or were brought here today by your own power. So first of all, let's thank God for that gift. Second of all, let's remember our friends or relatives and those who have had things taken away. Or maybe you've had things taken away. And maybe because things taken away, you've stopped praying. Or you've stopped having that deeper relationship with God because you're angry and you're bitter and you're frustrated because someone or something got taken away. I'm here to tell you that God is here to fill the emptiness of the things that got taken away. He's here to give you the love and the mercy and the salvation that you can't possibly fathom or imagine what he wants to give you. It's a tremendous gift. So for everything that gets taken away, we always kind of think, what are we going to replace it with? And instead of searching and crawling the walls of things to fill it up with, maybe God's providing you an opportunity for you to sit down with him and find the real treasure in your life, which is your faith and your relationship with God. Because that's the gift that can never be taken away. That's the gift that will only grow over time if you allow it. That's the gift that he wants to give you. So in those times of desperation, those times of finding that you're helpless and you can't do anything, that's when he's asking you to turn to him and allow him to fill you up with an everlasting love, an everlasting gift, and an everlasting treasure.